The biggest thing you gave me was time.
I've always been a proponent of do the job, do it well.
When you're a family, everyone in the family has to be treated with respect.
I couldn't have done this without you. Coming here to K-State, you've been my confidant and in the room with me.
I want to know who you really are, right? You can put whatever you want on paper, but that doesn't really matter.
His teachers, they meet the learner wherever he is.
They don't care what you know.
They know how much you care.
Be aggressive. That's win. Here we go.
Take us through your journey, the journey that now leads you to be the athletic director at Hampton University.
Wow, it's a winding journey, one that I did not plan. So I'll start with coming to Hampton. Hampton's my alma mater. So 1995, a little scrawny little defensive back from Powhatan, Virginia, came to Hampton University to play football. And that I would say that was the beginning, coming here to play for Coach Taylor and, having a great 5 years here at Hampton University, playing for Coach at the time. My teammates and I talk about this all the time. You didn't appreciate the life lessons and kind of how he was developing men. And now looking back at it, all of us are doing well in different phases of life and doing things that back then you would never imagine that we'd be doing at 45 to 50 years old. Hampton, I tell people all the time, changed my life, actually, coming here and being around the men that I grew up with and are still close to this day. So then finished here. Didn't really quite know what I wanted to do. Majored in marketing. Always thought I wanted to work in sports, and ended up going back to. I'm from Richmond, Virginia, Powhatan County, right outside of Richmond. Ended up going back home and working in insurance for 2 years. I worked in Travelers marketing department for a year and Progressive marketing department for a year, and realized I hated it. I was like, this is not what I want to do. So I ended up going back to grad school. So I went to grad school at VCU. At the time was the Sports Center, now the Center for Sport Leadership. And, I found my niche. I found what I really wanted to do. I interned in the marketing department while I was there. Also interned at the Richmond Braves and in their ticket office. So minor league baseball and college athletics at the time. And really during my time interning in the marketing department at VCU, I really felt college athletics is where I wanted to be. Kind of rode that through the season. At the time, Jeff Capel was the basketball coach there, so the team was really good. And, on that track to going to the NCAA tournament. So you get those experiences early, right? And those things kind of draw you in. So when you graduate from that program, you have to do an externship. So I actually went down, fortunately was selected to go to the Wild World of Sports at Disney and worked in the marketing department there and worked on all the Disney created events. So like all the baseball, softball, Disney track and field events, Disney Marathon, Funai Classic, which was the PGA event at the time that was there, Atlanta Braves spring training, Tampa Bay Bucks training camp, Pop Warner Super Bowl. So it was a lot of varied experience. Probably one of the best internships in the country. So got a lot of experience while I lived in Orlando. I was there for a year and a half. And fortunately, I guess coming back full circle, ended up getting a call from Dr. Sander, who was the AD at VCU at the time, after finishing up the program. And he called and said, hey, the commissioner of the MEAC called me and said he was looking for a director of marketing and sponsorship. He said, are you interested? And I said, well, Doc, my intern's finishing up and I don't have a job. So absolutely, I'm interested. Yeah. So fortunately, the commissioner at the time, Dr. Thomas, was the AD here at Hampton when I was here. And I came back to Virginia, interviewed with him, and he offered me a job to come work for him at the MEAC office. So I was the director of marketing and sponsorship, overseeing all the sponsorship and ticket sales for the MEAC tournament, and dealing with all 12 of our institutions, making sure our conference brand was being used appropriately and connecting the schools that way. So that was great. Back in being an HBCU grad, back in the environment, did that for 3 years. And then the company that ran our basketball tournament, from an event management standpoint, stole me away. And I went and worked and ran the Jordan Brand Classic for a year, which was awesome. Got a lot of the event management experience, being on the business side, having a marketing background. That was all I had done at the time. So got a chance to add some event management background. Still did the sponsorship, sales, and activation and all those pieces, but also getting a chance to kind of have my hands in the event, managing the clients, Brand Jordan, City of New York, Madison Square Garden. So definitely getting some really good experience from there. I think the toughest part of my job was managing 18-year-old blue chip athletes in the City of New York who already thought they were in the NBA. So that was fun, keeping those guys kind of in the right place and making sure they weren't doing the wrong things. But that was fun for a year, but I realized I missed college athletics. So fortunately enough, ODU at the time was starting football. That was back in 2008, and they needed fundraisers. So with my background being from Richmond, having gone to Hampton, they wanted somebody specifically that could go on the peninsula, Richmond, DC, and kind of grow that donor base. So, my background being from the area, also my background in marketing, kind of fell into that position, having the contacts from my time at VCU. So I was there for 3 years, which was great, kind of getting the football program off the ground, and seeing that come to fruition from not playing a game to selling out every game, was really cool to see. Being with Coach Wilder, I think the first year they didn't have a game. I think we did probably 300 speaking engagements that year, just getting out in the community, trying to get everybody excited about ODU football. So that was great experience. And then, funny enough, I wanted to go to the FBS level, and I got an opportunity to go to the University of Akron. And then shortly thereafter, ODU went to the FBS level. So I guess I probably should have just stayed and waited it out. But nobody really saw that coming. We tried to be the best in the CAA at the time, and this whole conference realignment thing, as we know, just kind of jumps up and presents opportunities when you least expect it. So nobody knew that was going to happen. So I'm in Akron. Went to Akron to be the associate AD for development and run the fundraising operation there, and then also the sport administrator for football. So that was great experience. As everyone tells you, you want to be an AD, you have to get that football oversight experience. That's one of those things that that kind of crowns you as being ready to be an athletic director. So I'm very appreciative of Larry Williams giving me that opportunity. I had 2 ADs while I was at Akron. Tom Worcester was the first 4 years, and then the last 4 was Larry Williams. And the last 4 is probably the reason I'm actually sitting in this seat today. Larry came in and, took an interest in my career and helping me progress, and gave me a lot of different opportunities that I needed and didn't necessarily get early on. So, having the opportunity to sit in meetings and listen to what it actually meant to be an AD, and, he would ask me questions and bounce things off me, and being able to provide that input and background and actually participate, gave me an opportunity to actually provide ideas, but not necessarily be the one making the decisions. So
That's always
it's kind of a safe space, right? You got a chance to actually provide some things that may not be correct, but you get a chance to learn. So that I'm definitely appreciative to him for that opportunity. Then got the opportunity to come back to Virginia, and work for Samantha Hughey at William & Mary. once again overseeing fundraising, overseeing football, and kind of helping. She had been there a year already, and kind of helping her kind of build that department. So back home, getting in your groove, and then 2020 COVID hit, and everything kind of, as everybody knows, shut down, and you got to kind of figure out what you're going to do. At the time, we cut 7 sports at William & Mary, kind of similar to a lot of institutions across the country at that time. Was they were reducing their sports sponsorship, and when you do that, it doesn't necessarily go over well sometimes, and it didn't go over well at William & Mary. So we went through that, and Samantha ended up resigning her position, and things kind of went south, I guess, as you could say. And we got a new AD in, Brian Mann, who was awesome. Brian and I still talk. We're colleagues now. He's still at William & Mary, and I'm at Hampton, and we're in the same conference. And the opportunity presented itself for me to go to Yale, and I thought about staying. I told Brian wanted me to stay, and I just thought that he would be more successful if I took another opportunity, just because the way things happened with the cutting of the sports, and I was always going to be kind of attached to that, and being in that fundraising role, it's a little bit difficult. So made the decision to leave William & Mary and go to Yale and be the deputy AD for external affairs, overseeing marketing, ticketing, communications, all the external units of the department, and also picking up some sport oversight over some sports that I really had not overseen before. So I was a baseball sport administrator, women's ice hockey, men's soccer, and swim and dive. So picking up some sports and some experiences I didn't necessarily have at other places, which helped me kind of broaden my portfolio. And then, I was there a year, and fortunately or unfortunately, the AD at Hampton decided to leave and go to Binghamton, and president had been here for almost a year, and we got connected. December 23. No, I'm sorry, December 20. Yeah, no, December of 22. I'm sorry. He got hired in July 22. So December 22, we got connected, and things worked out, and I was able to come back to my alma mater. So one of those full circle moments. Everybody's path looks different, and probably if I started off again, it probably wouldn't play out the same way. It's just kind of divine intervention and circumstance that kind of gets you back to where you are. But I'm definitely happy to be home. It's been an interesting journey, but to be back here, to be able to bring kind of all of those experiences that I've gathered from all those different stops, and then to come here and try to implement them to make Hampton better. It's kind of a dream come true, I guess is the best way to put it.
That's it's cool. When you talk about your journey, when you talked about the stops, when you talk about, some of those things were not in your control. Most of those things, you don't control. And I always talk to people about, but in this world we live in, there's always transition.
Yep.
Sometimes you actually get fired. I like to use those terms when I say fired, right?
Yep.
These little cute terms, but sometimes that happens, and that's just a part of our lives. There are careers out there. There are people, man, they don't deal with that at all, right?
Yep.
That is a quite a distance from their existence when it comes to their career. But that's just a part of ours. And the whole transition, as I think about it and as I talk about it, is that sometimes, like, we make moves, and if I'm talking about the ones that we don't control, those kind of moves.
Yep.
Those moves happen, and you end up being better for it, right? Whereas if you didn't make that move because you were comfortable in that place,
Yep.
if you didn't make that, like you talked about, making the move to Yale, where you picked up other sports that you probably would have never experienced,
Yep.
things you never would have done. And you were over where you were growing, but if you don't get put in that situation to leave William and Mary, man, you don't grow. Those are some growth experiences that you're using today.
Yep.
That if you stayed at William and Mary, you might not have even had.
Yep. Absolutely.
And so that's kind of cool for me to hear you talk about it again, to kind of confirm what I've heard people talk about, the discussions we've had in the past. So I want to go to my next question, which is about core values. Here at K-State, we kind of talk through our team. We train our guys on the values that we espouse to have as a program. And I talk to my players in my position room, and I ask them, man, what are you? Forget what we're talking about with this team, with K-State football team, but what are your values? When somebody sees you, what is it that you want them to see? What is it that you, as an individual, stand for? So I pose that question to them, and so I'll pose the same questions to you, because here we talk about discipline, we talk about commitment, we talk about toughness, and we talk about being selfless. Now, there's hundreds of core values, but
Yep.
what are yours? Just two or three, and how do they go into your role as the leader of Hampton Athletics?
Yeah, it's to your point, there's a ton of core values, right? I think everybody's been through those exercises where you circle the words and try to figure out what your core values are.
Right.
And they change, right? Like sometimes, like for 4 or 5 years, they're one thing, and then you look up and there's something else. I actually, when I got here, that was one of the things that I tried to implement in the department. I talked about being elite, and that's an acronym for the core values that I espouse and wanted the department to espouse as well. And it starts with excellence, leadership, integrity, teamwork, and energy. And I talk about that all the time with our staff and our student athletes. Um, because at the end of the day, we want to be elite at everything we do. And if you strive to be elite, we know we're not perfect. We know everything is not going to end up perfect. But if you strive to be perfect and strive to be elite, um, you'll fall somewhere where you're at least excellent, probably. So that's one of the things when you talk about, and I strive for that as well. Like in my personal core values, when we talk about that excellence piece, that was kind of ingrained in me being here at Hampton, because that's one of our sayings. The standard of excellence, education for life is one of those things. You talk about Hampton University, and I kind of carried that with me from the time I entered here until the time I came back. And that's one of the things that I think that if you carry that with you and you try to do that every day, you're gonna have bad days, and everything's not going to be great every day. But if you wake up the next morning, you try to be excellent in what you do, more likely than not, things are going to end up the right way. So that's we talk about core values. That's why the first word or the first part of that is excellence.
Right. So now this podcast, like I was alluding to it earlier, when we started this podcast, it was because we wanted to go into the minds of leaders and figure out how they do their business. At the end of the day, one person may say it one way, or maybe differently said or acted out than another person. But we always, as we've seen hundreds of leaders over the years, we always find that we're going and we're arriving at the same place.
Yep.
And we always look back and discover that we didn't get there by ourselves. And so my next question to you is when you look at your life, your athletic director life, your professional life, who have been the leaders in your life, and you can give me two if you like.
Yeah.
And what did those people teach you that you still use today?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, wow. I don't know if I can narrow it down to two. I've had so many people that have poured in me and helped me get to this point. I'll start with Craig Littlepage. When I was in grad school at VCU, Craig was one of the first persons I actually talked to about this business. We had to do an interview as a part of a class project about who we wanted to be and where we wanted to be. And, being in Virginia and not too far from Charlottesville, I was like, one of the first black ADs and at the Power 5 level was right up the street. That's representation matters, right? Like that's one of, if you're going to shoot to be something, you want to be an athletic director. That's a person that I want to emulate. So, as part of that project, we had to interview someone. So I called his office and his assistant, Becky. I love Becky to this day, answered the phone and, I told her who I was and what I was trying to do. And she was like, well, he likes to do that type stuff. Let me call you back. I'll see what we can do. So she called me back like 30 minutes later and said, I have good news and bad news for you. I was like, well, give me the good news first. It's like, well, he wants to do it. I was like, okay, great. That's awesome. I was like, so what's the bad news? He wants you to come to Charlottesville. He doesn't want you to do it over the phone. So I was like, that's not bad news at all. 45-minute ride from Richmond to Charlottesville and sit down with Mr. Littlepage. I definitely in for that. So, I went up there and, I was expecting to get 15, 20, 30 minutes. We talked for 2 hours about life, about the business, about how he got to where he was. And, one of the questions I asked him was, what's the best? I know there's no easy route to get to the AD chair, but what's the best route to take for me as a black male in this business? What's the best route for me to take? And he told me, he said, make sure you stay on the revenue side, the revenue generation side, because you're always going to have to show that you can generate revenue from this seat. And you being a black male, not that you can't get there from the internal compliance, sports, student athlete development side, but that's where they're going to push you. Being a black male, they think you can relate to the student athletes a little bit better. So you're going to get pushed there early. But if you want to get to the AD seat, stay on the revenue side, show you can generate revenue. That's not necessarily going to be easier, but it's going to be one of those things where you have a fighting chance. So that's what I did. That's why I've always been on the marketing side, the development side, trying to show that I can generate revenue and raise funds, and it's worked out well for me. So I know that conversation started it all, and then after I got into business, there's been so many folks. Lee Reed's been a big brother to me. AD at Georgetown has been a big brother to me for a long time. Tim Duncan's one of the first people that I picked the phone up and called at New Orleans. I think about all the guys that we all came up in this business together that are deputies at Power Fives now, and other places. So I've had a village that has helped me in this game, that I think we all kind of draw from each other, because we all face the same issues, regardless of what logo we have on, whether that be professionally or personally. So I've had a lot of people that have helped me get to this point.
Okay. So now in that seat, you have the opportunity. Now I'm a big leadership book reader, and one of the books that I read, it talks about putting people on the bus.
The energy bus. I talk about it all the time. Yep.
That book. People say a lot of times books change their lives. That book set me on the right course in my life. There's a lot of others as well, but that book was a big point in my life. And actually, after reading that book, I read many more that talk about the bus, that talk about people on the bus and making sure they're in the right seat. And so that's what I want to go to next is in your role, you're always putting people on your bus. And we're not going to talk about what seat they sit in, but how do you know what are the things you look for to decide if a person is fit or is a fit on your bus in your program? What are the things you look for a person to be on your bus?
I think the first thing is depending on what position it is, right, and what you need. I'm a firm believer in hiring my weaknesses. So, like I said, I'm an external guy. I'm a marketing, fundraising guy. I don't like compliance. I don't like all of those other sides of the house. And not that I can't do them, it's just not what I'm passionate about. So, when I got here, my first hire, or one of the first hires was my SWA, who was excellent in all of those areas to cover those blind spots as my number two. And she's done an excellent. Renee Edwards has done an excellent job for us here. But when you talk about determining if people are the right fit, one, you have to know, like I said, what your shortcomings and deficiencies are and how you can plug those holes. But two, I mean, the first thing you look at is the character of the person. This business is small. You can have conversations with folks and find out a whole lot really quickly, especially when it comes to character and what type of person you are. So I think character, being knowledgeable about your craft, trying to be an expert in your craft, and knowing what you're doing in this business. Having a passion for the student athlete, because that's why we're here. So if you're not here to, support the student athletes and want to see them go on to be professionals and husbands and wives and leaders in the community, then it's probably not going to work because we're not aligned when it comes to that. So I think those are the big things when you talk about getting the people on the bus and who you put on your bus. It all comes down to people, right? Like you can learn things or how to do certain things, but some things you can't be taught. And you talk about character and those type things. You are who you are, especially at this age. You're not gonna change your spots at this point. So I think that's the biggest piece is just making sure you fit from a character perspective, from a passion perspective, what you're passionate about, especially being around each other as much as we are in this business. And we spend more time, with the folks in the office and with other people's kids more than we spend with our families sometimes. So got to make sure it's the right people when you're doing that.
All right. So now, and as a coach, I get this question all the time. I get questions that are in this same neighborhood all the time. So I'll pose it to you. How, talking about NIL, talking about the transfer portal, how has this new landscape affected how you go about your daily business? When I'm talking about NIL, talking about the transfer portal and how that is a part of your programs nowadays. How has that forced you to adjust the way you operate as an athletic?
Yeah, it's forced me to adjust quickly. At this level, people don't think it affects us as much as it affects the bigger schools, but it does. It trickles down. I mean, we're in that NIL space right now. We're about to start our collective. Probably announcing that next week, or I guess I just announced it. But we're about to start our collective in this league, in the league we're in, the Coastal. We changed the name, the Coastal Athletic Association. We have some really good programs in this league, and the NIL piece, the collective piece. If you don't have an active one, you're going to be behind. So, we have to figure out how we're going to navigate in this space, which I think we have. We have influencer exchange. We had that set up a few months ago. And like I said, I found a few alums that understand that NIL collective space. They're going to run our collective for us. So we're going to be in that space as well. But, as a fundraiser and as somebody that's been on this side for almost 20 years now. We have to figure out, we have limited resources and limited donors. So now you got to figure out what's more important. Are we raising funds for operational things, facilities, things that we need to improve the program? Or are we raising money for NIL because we need that to get players to compete? It's probably a little bit of both, right? But you got to figure out what the balance is and where people want to actually give and spend their money. So that's just another dynamic now to try to, and then you have to figure out the messaging and how you're going to differentiate the two and make sure people understand where to give and how those dollars affect each bucket. So it's a lot more thought that goes into it now than just going and asking people to support your program financially. Now you have to figure out what's more important and how you're going to compete. And that plays into the transfer portal, right? Because one, you got to keep your kids because other schools are trying to come in and take them and get them to come play for them. And they may have larger war chests when it comes to NIL. But two, you have to go and play in the transfer portal too and go get kids from other places. And I think, honestly, in my opinion, you've probably seen this as a coach. I think right now the high school kids are getting hurt by all of this. Yeah. Because, a coach is going to go get a proven commodity that's played at this level, that they know can compete at this level, because at the end of the day, they have to win, right? And they don't have much time. So I think the development of high school players is suffering. Getting high school kids into college now, I think, is being affected by this in a negative way. And I really don't like it, but I don't see it changing anytime soon. So I feel sorry for the high school kids that are coming out that may have had opportunities that don't necessarily get the opportunities now because there are just fewer of them, because you're looking at the kids that are in the transfer portal. And then you look at the transfer portal, you look at the numbers, from last year, I think there were 40% of the kids that didn't find a home. So, that's kind of disturbing as well, because you have a kid that has gone to an institution of higher education. Even if they didn't play, at least they would have gotten a degree. And now they're leaving because they think the grass is greener on the other side and they don't land anywhere. And this kid may not ever get a college degree but for their ability to play whatever sport, they may not have been able to go to college in the first place. So, that's a piece of it that is an unintended consequence that is really bothering me, because, let's be honest, 65 to 75% of them are probably Black when you look at football and basketball. I'm a first generation college student. My college degree changed my life. So we're talking about life altering decisions right now. We talk about trajectory and where they may end up. So yeah, it's deep. it's definitely a deep thing now when you talk about transfer portal, NIL, and all of those things. It's not just monetary. It's a lot that goes into it.
Which I think, to your point, we as coaches and we as athletic departments, we as the adults in the environment, we have a big time responsibility, because, the young people who are in this environment, in this space, they are negotiating contracts, they are representing themselves, and I, man, we all agree that for the student athletes to be able to monetize their brand, they work hard for the things that they achieve on the field, and there are opportunities off the field to have relationships with corporate America.
Yep.
So to allow them to be able to take advantage of that, they deserve it. But I think we have to make sure we do a great job. And I think, in our Congress, within the NCAA, within the conferences, there's work being done to put these guardrails up, because we can't just let them do it however they want to do it. Yep. We have to put guardrails up, not only guardrails to protect them for today, but to protect them for tomorrow, to protect them when it comes to taxes, to protect them when it comes, there's young people who are taking advantage of NIL opportunities today. They may not have the opportunity to play in the NFL.
Yep.
So that big influx of money, that's it. You know what I mean? So educating them on the management of these resources that they are having the opportunity to take advantage of today, I mean that 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to have that opportunity. So I think that's a big part of it that, that sometimes we miss. And I think
Yep.
there are programs who are out front in that way. But like you said earlier, no parts of it. When you talk about the transfer portal, when you talk about NIL, man, we're going down this road. The genie is out of the bottle. But I just believe that just because the genie is out of the bottle, we can corner the genie.
Yeah.
We can say, genie, you're not going to be all over the place now. You're going to be right over here. We're going to be able to control you to help these young people maximize these opportunities, again, not just for today, but for well after this. So I want to ask you a question, really, to allow you to give a message to a young person, right? A young person who is aspiring to do what you do, right? A young person who is looking at the career as an athletic director, the career as a sport administrator, and they're thinking that this is something that they want to do. What message would you give to a young person, a young male or female, a young person who is looking to walk the path that you?
Ooh, that's a deep question. I think the first thing I would say is be willing to do pretty much anything. Like there's so many avenues in this college athletic space. There's no one way to get to the chair. Like I said, uh, Paige told me external. I have friends that have gotten to the chair through other means, academics, compliance. Um, there's so many. The one thing I do like about college athletics, there's so many opportunities and avenues to break in. Depending on what your interests are. So that'll be the first thing I would say is be willing to do anything. One, just to get in the door. You can move around once you get in, but the hardest part is getting in the door because the circles are so small. Um, the second thing I would be remiss if I didn't say is make sure that you're getting out and getting and meeting people. Networking is huge in this business, and it's not about everybody says it's about who you know. It's really not. It's about who knows you and who can talk about you when you're not in the room and advocate for you. Because a lot of these jobs, one, um, they're not posted all the time. It's a conversation. Hey, I have this opening. Who do you know? And you know, at the end of the day, like I said, the circles are small. So if you don't get out and network and get to know people and speak into existence what you want to do so people know what you want to do so they can advocate for you or try to put you in the right spaces. Um, that's one of the biggest things about this piece. If you want to navigate this, um, and you can't, unfortunately, you can't be afraid to move around a little bit. That's one of the things about this profession. There are 300 some odd Division I institutions, and they're all over the country. And the opportunities, depending on what you want to do and where you want to be, you don't know where your next opportunity may be. You may have to take a couple of moves you didn't think you would take. I never thought I'd live in the Midwest. I don't like cold. I don't like snow, but I was in Akron for 8 years. So, sometimes you gotta take a move that you wouldn't necessarily think you would to get to where you want to be. So, those are the biggest three things I would say. I mean, there are a lot more, but those are the biggest three that I've kind of applied to my climb and where I've gotten to. And I had to learn that as well, just throughout my career.
Got a couple other questions, but and I'm really trying to decide between two. I'm going to choose my favorite question. My favorite question, and it actually really applies to you because you were a former student athlete, right? And man, that was nothing like game day for you, right? As a student athlete, you roll up there, the stadium is rocking, and you look pregame warm-ups, and you hear the band playing, looking across, see your opponent that you've been preparing for all week, and man, you are when that ball is kicked off, you are ready to go, right? You probably can't still do any of that stuff anymore.
No.
So that's why you're in another place. And so my question to you is what is your game day today? What is game day for you today? What what gets your juices flowing as an athletic director, just like it did when you were a defensive back?
I think it is game day. Like, but for me, it's, it was one sport when I was playing. It was football, right?
Mhm.
Now it's all of them. Like, I like to see our student athletes compete. I like it even more when they win. But I get just as excited as they do on game day because that that competitiveness never goes away. So they're all my teams now. So when I go to softball, we beat Norfolk State 2 days ago, 13-4. That's our Battle of the Bay, biggest rival. I was just as excited as the young ladies were. Um, so I think, seeing them compete, seeing them be successful, uh, providing them the resources and opportunities to do so is my game day these days. So, like I said, I like to talk to our coaches. I don't provide a lot of feedback. I like to give my opinion every once in a while, but that's why you hire coaches, right? You hire coaches to coach. But I wouldn't be the AD if I didn't interject and give my opinion every once in a while. You don't have to take it, coach, but I'm just
Right.
saying.
Should punt it right here, coach. If I were you, I'd punt it right here. Well, man, Anthony, I appreciate it. Again, it's great to hear your message. I've followed your career, right? And I think it's like you said earlier, you kind of alluded to earlier. It's so important that when we can support one another, people in this world, older, younger, it doesn't matter where you started. It doesn't matter where you are. We all, get in there, man. And to me, it's always about linking in with good people.
Yep.
And, when you link in with good people, you said something as well earlier about the fact that, which I totally agree with, and I talk to young coaches about it all the time, is that, man, you think it's about what you know. No, it's not about what you know. Then they'll say, oh, yeah, you're right. It's about who you know. Not about who you know, buddy. It's about who knows you, right? Because you might think you know this person and you trying to call them and they're not even answering your call, right? But when you have somebody who knows you, they're in the room talking about you when you're not even there,
Yep.
And so those things I believe they resonate. They resonate with me, but they continue to be true in my life. So I appreciate you for being with us tonight. I appreciate having our opportunity to connect with you. And man, again, we're gonna follow you and push and pull for Hampton athletics until we get exactly to where we want to be.
I appreciate that.